All right, 10:01. Let's rock and roll. Welcome to the Hammerdown Podcast here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Today, I've got Sarah Richardson from Tivity Health to talk about aging. Sarah, good afternoon. How are you?
Jay, I'm fabulous, and I just crested the afternoon hour out here in California. So you got 3 hours on me, but it definitely is a great afternoon.
Well, I think I've mainlined more caffeine than you have today, Sarah, so we'll be okay.
I've been up since 4. We might be aligned.
Yeah, we're probably close within a 2-hour window on that, but
Yeah,
welcome aboard. Glad to have you on.
thank you.
I know we
Yeah.
crossed paths and had a couple of year history since I've been here at Fortinet. You were one of the first people I spoke with in a forum. Love to have you on the podcast today. So, Sarah, what do you do, and what does Tivity do?
What do I do? I'm the Chief Digital Information Officer. Don't know that more needs to go into that mix, other than the fact that I've been doing healthcare IT for about 23 years, and I've been doing a role like leadership at the executive level since 2007 formally. So it's nice to be able to continue on. We talk about aging in the whole space. I'll be 49 in 2 weeks. And a recent mentor and friend of mine said, always share your age, because ageism is a thing. I'm like, what thing is it? I'm like, what are you going to say? I'm too young. I'm too old. I'm just like, right in the middle, just right. I share my years of age as much as my experience, because that's how much like you're getting from the time that you spend with me. And I don't mean you and me in a podcast as much as like those years of acumen get brought forward in a way that still, heck, I got about 15 years of my career or more left. So sort of still right in the thick of it. So it's more of like an awareness factor than anything else. That's why I love Tivity. Tivity is about living longer, healthier, happier, independent lives as long as we possibly can. Most people know us for silver sneakers, which kicks in at 65 through Medicare Advantage, except that the age-ins, you and I are age-ins, by the time we get to be 65, number one, we should have really good fitness and wellness habits. Trigger events usually cause people to think about that differently. And we do have product lines, both Prime and Burn Along, that can ensure that you have that journey well determined before you turn 65. So we're like a lifelong brand. We're just best known for silver sneakers.
Yeah, silver sneakers. I think we talked a lot about that when we first met. What's interesting is one of our
Yeah.
connections is about fitness. I'm going to give a little plug. I've got the 24-hour rollathon. It's for Charlotte Foundation at the gym. Corey, who runs Weddington Fitness Center here, CrossFit Weddington. You were a big Pelotoner coming out of the pandemic is when we met. But that's one of the things is aging population. There's so many different use cases with fitness being tied into when you're getting older. But one of the things Corey says is that you don't want to be hitting that button or not being prepared for when you do get older. So I'm almost 49. I'll be 49 in January. So we're in the same window of class of 1992. I share that, as well as, as I've gotten older, I've taken, much better care of what my routine and regimen with fitness is. But when we talk about aging population as the trend, what are you seeing from a membership perspective, Sarah? How much of an increase, or, why are people going to Tivity silver sneakers and filling into this gap within the market?
Yeah, here's why. We're a 30-year brand, and that has a ton of lasting power. More importantly, you think about the brands that you love to use. And just like, what's one of your favorite brands?
One of my favorite brands, I got to be honest with you, it's
Yeah.
the Rock collection from Reebok.
Okay.
Sorry,
And
Under Armour, the Rock.
Under Armour. And it's probably known, tried, trusted, anticipated, like all the reasons you keep using a product and people ask you about it, you tell them. We have found through tons of market research and also through our member surveys that the trust in a brand is one of the reasons that you'll continue to use it over and over again. And our sweet spot with customers is 65 to the 80 range. And not that we don't have members who are far, we have some that are in their hundreds, but that sweet spot of longevity for humans in general, this is scientific, 65 to 80 are the years that people are the most active in their senior years, typically. It's also where we see the greatest utilization from our members. We have 18 million members through our Medicare Advantage plans. And what's fascinating about Medicare Advantage is you think about how many people are actually using Medicare today. And there are, what was the latest stats that I pulled? It was as of September of 22, there's 65 million people enrolled in Medicare, 35 million in traditional Medicare, and 30 million in Medicare Advantage. 18 million of those are ours. So we have over 50% market share of just the eligible seniors in Medicare Advantage plans. And then if your Medicare Advantage plan has us, and over 74 plans do, you already have your automatic, you have your in-person gym access, you have your on-demand video access, you have your live video access, you have access to brain health activities, so many ways to keep yourself fit and aware. And whether that's a social connection as much as it is a connection for meeting with your trainer or spending time with your family, like all those things are important in your journey with Silver Sneakers. And so we have love letters that come in from our members, and they tell us about the relationships they've made, how we've helped them recover from the loss of a spouse or a significant illness, or because of us, they have been able to get back in the game, as we like to call it. And nobody wants to live a really long time if they're not healthy. So you think of us, you think of like your partnership and wellness, and we're there for you even when you're not super healthy. If you get sick, we'll still be here for you when you get back. And we have, beginner, intermediate, advanced classes. So it's not like you end your journey if you get injured. You just come back as you go through some of the stretch class, yoga class. Maybe you're getting back into Zumba. We have classes that are just chair-based for those that have limited mobility. There's so many ways to engage with us, and we are so connected to our members because of that. And that's nationwide. So as you think about not only the quality of the programming, the expansion of the services, the amount of people involved with us and how long we've been around, it's almost like a de facto notion that when you turn 65, you're going to go shop for your Medicare Advantage plan and you're going to look for Silver Sneakers, because we are a place that keeps you to our mission: longer, healthier, happier, independent living. And that's what everybody really wants in their life as they get older.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I did some market research too, because I wanted, you're world renowned as a moderator and a panelist. And, we go to a lot of forums together. We're either on competing stages or before and after. Trey, in our field CISO, Nate, myself, whoever. But one of the things I found today is isolation impacts 20 million seniors from the National Council of Aging. So that's wild. And so what it seems you and Tivity give is the opportunity and access to a community. And that's why, you talk about favorite brands. I'm a member of the CrossFit community. So whether I'm at my local gym or I drop in a box, like Memorial Day weekend, I had to do the Murph, I dropped in a box. They're like, hey, welcome. That's part of the community. That's, a nice connection point for those people. It's crazy. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but from now until 2030, since we're young enough that we're not even thinking about this, but 10,000 people are going to retire every day. And what are they going to do?
3.65 million Americans a year.
Yep, 10,000 a day. 2031 being the last year of the boomers retiring. So it's crazy. And one of the things that, I was like, go do something, right? So one of the things we talked about, you're like, oh, I'm a rider, I got a Peloton. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a CrossFit, I'm running. But pickleball. So, this is probably one of the complementary things. Pickleball, 22 million players. A third of them are seniors. And now the actuaries are saying it's going to increase health insurance by $430 million. So Silver Sneakers sounds like a great way
I saw that this morning too.
Right? Isn't that wild?
Well, and we do. We have pickleball activities throughout Silver Sneakers. And it's been this like massive thing that's on the rise. Like everyone's playing pickleball. In fact, just this morning, there was an article that talks about, health insurance is going to go up because of pickleball. And I was like, here's the deal though. Let's think about where we anticipate that increase in insurance rates. Would you rather have it from a sports injury, which may or may not be temporary? Or would you rather have it be, I don't know, cardiovascular, hypertension, cancer, osteoarthritis, or diabetes, which are the top 5 things that affect people as they get older? How about none of the above, and I hurt my knee, or I sprained my elbow, or I got tennis elbow, whatever, from pickleball? Pick a reason for there to be that increase potentially. What would you rather have it be? Chronic illness or sports injury?
Absolutely not. So the chronic illness thing is the worst thing that anybody can have, because the physical activity, which one of my next guests, because everybody seems to want to talk about aging population, but if you're not active, you're more susceptible to Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's impacts everybody in the family, because the cognitive behavior is awful. So I agree with you. It's like you can't win. So should we just sit around, eat Twinkies and drink beer and smoke, or should we go and be physically active no matter what age we are, right?
Can you just imagine how gross that sounds? Hey, I'm going to go sit on the couch and eat a Twinkie and drink a beer and smoke a cigarette. Like it just sounds so gross, Jay. I'm actually wearing flowered yoga pants as the part of me that you can't see, because I go from working all day, Zoom, whatever, boom, straight to my gym routine. And it's going to be like 100 degrees here today. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be fun. Doesn't matter. It's still that discipline of being healthy and working out and being well. And I work for a company that represents that. So it's pretty important for, I think, brand awareness and brand representation. But you touched on the loneliness factor. It's something we track very closely and very seriously, because loneliness, especially in seniors, is a whole space of that isolation component. It was completely exacerbated by COVID. And now that COVID is waned a bit in terms of what people are worried about, they're getting out and about and in public again, we're starting to see a decline in live digital visits, and more people going back to the gym, more people playing pickleball, more people being outdoors and wanting to spend time in that community-based activities. And I think about that, like, how do you help seniors be less lonely? And if you have a senior in your life, and whether or not they're in a fitness routine, how do you help them? How do you have lunch with them? How do you figure out a way to take them out on a social occasion? Because my aunt and uncle are in their 80s, and I spend time with them relatively often. They're very active, by the way. And yet there's also that space and time that tells us everything is limited. And so if someone's 82, even if they're super healthy, how many more years do you have to spend with them? And so I'm very focused on our seniors in terms of like all of the quality time you can spend with people. It's a continuum of the fact that it's important to recognize who needs us most. That's a lot about that mission-based work we do both as healthcare practitioners, as well as the types of healthcare we represent in the work that we do every day.
Right. And the insurers, you talk about the insurance companies, posting about the pickleball thing, but in their whole grand scheme of things, they do talk about $1 in prevention is worth $10 in care. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to get in that canoe, because it's my son gives me a hard time. It's like, hey, we're watching, a movie and they're like, oh, they're going to put him in an old folks home. I'm like, Dad, what old folks home are we going to put you in? I'm like, none. I'm going to age in place, because I have access to other things and they don't have a CrossFit gym at the old folks home. He's like, oh, well, we got to find a gym. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. So, that's definitely a component of aging in place. It's great what you guys are doing as a firm to offer that service to such a high level of constituents and people that consume it. So that's great. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, how do you use technology, Sarah, and how does Tivity, between Silver Sneakers and all the other programs, how do you leverage technology to deliver that experience to the end customer that is like either a paying member, subsidized member? How do you leverage technology to get them engaged in the community?
Absolutely. So I believe what's probably most exciting to actually share more collectively is the fact that we have been a pretty traditional on-prem, organization who built a lot of our own monolithic applications that lived in data centers, and we churned out the ability to do membership and ingestion and activity and billing and processing and websites and engagement and signing up for classes and attending, and all of our provider locations that have a network and letting us know who's been to the gym and feeding all that information back between our clients and our members. All of that incredibly well thought out and well organized for a long period of time. A few years ago, we're like, hey, you know what? These data centers are going to hit a cliff in 2024 at the end of it. And so how quickly can we modernize our technologies to literally get there and get out of them and go AWS cloud native services and rebuild things in a dynamic way and use microservices and APIs and all the fancy fun terms you hear about? We're not that big of a company. That's what I love about Tivity. It's why I left Optum that had almost 200,000 people to come to Tivity that has less than 500, is that the desire to do a true digital transformation and the support and the funding, the ability to do that in about a 30-month window. So by the end of next year, we will be fully cloud native AWS services. No more data centers, no more on-prem activities, no more of the structures that maybe held you in place like they did before. It's infrastructure as code. It's the ability to go serverless. It's like so many fun things happening all at the same time. We have this finite group of humans that are all dedicated to that cause and that capability, and we're doing it. And we are right in the throes of it. So we are at about 12% completion as of this morning with my team update. And I love it. So you think about all the ways that you deliver technology that is easy for people to use, has capabilities for composable architecture for marketing and for your website utilization and for the user experience, regardless of their age. Those are all the things we get to do hand in hand with marketing and product and integration across the board. Tivity is that everyone's all hands on deck all the time. And we are moving at a pace we've never been able to do before for myriad reasons, not just technology. But I love the fact we get to do it here because everyone says, there's no way you could do that. You're crazy. Like, oh, yes, we can and we are. Excuse me. And then people go, oh, well, I don't have an EMR, which is part of the back end that is a big deal for most of my peers in the history that I came from. But beyond that, it's a huge relationship with our information security team, our legal team, our compliance team. How do you do it? At the end of the day, The technology's already there, Jay. You and I know that.
Oh yeah.
How do you get all the humans to align to deploy and utilize the technologies that are available to you and do so in a really smart, like economic model so that IT is just not burning through cash? I love all of those things about what we're doing right now. So that's how we're utilizing technology, is taking advantage of everything that's available to us and customizing it in a way that is also democratized from the perspective of the users and also internally for Tivity.
So somebody told me to say that's awesome too often, but that's remarkable. And what's crazy is the intersection of the population you support is a Cadillac Generation, to where that was the marquee flagship car that they bought. And you're going more along the lines of how Tesla and those firms that are super dynamic and super iterative, and they do amazing things in a short amount of time, faster than any of their competitors. So I applaud you for it. It's awesome. I have to talk about our technology because this is the powered by that podcast. Some of what we've had success in the long-term care market. It's amazing how many seniors need access to Wi-Fi, because a lot of the user satisfaction or satisfaction of being part of that retirement community is having the opportunity to FaceTime or use Facebook Messenger or any of those other sources to go and communicate back to their family, wherever their family might be. You talk about we were joking about being remote, 100% remote. You're on Zoom all day, you're in the field, whatever it is. It's just a very different than going into the office, sitting through meetings, having coffee, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so the Fortinet story with the fabric and the fact that we've got 53 different products, and we go and enable those services so that those seniors have a better experience in those long-term care facilities, and they go and consume technology so that they can connect with their 5-year-old grandchild, that they know how to use an iPhone or an iPad or whatever. Mom's call on mom's phone. It's kind of a babysitter a little bit. So it's remarkable what you're doing, and it's very cool that we both support a huge percentage of the population that didn't grow up with any of this technology, but now they're using that as a tool, not just as the end all be all, like artificial intelligence that everybody thinks is going to solve everything. So,
well, when you think about, regardless of your age, you need a fast page load time. You need marketing to be able to build their own campaigns and not have someone have to code whatever's going to go on that website. Like, you start to put all of the technology tools into the hands of people actually using them. So we become the purveyor, for lack of a better degree, than the gatekeeper. And that is a fantastic place to be. It doesn't happen though overnight. I mean, I've been here almost 2.5 years. It took 2 years to do both the sociological as well as the technology plumbing to make certain things happen. Because you tell people who've done something in any space for a long period of time a certain way, they're like, well, why do we need to change it? Well, humans don't love change. So you create a future, a vision of what things will actually look like and be. And then they start getting in there and playing with it. And they're like, this is really cool. Like, some of our programmers, we have just some exceptional talent on our team. They're like, this is amazing. Like, that moment where they go, I mean, I don't have to wait for somebody else to do this, or I could do this in 3 days versus 3 weeks. You're like, yep. They're like, what else can I do? And the art of the possible is really how we've positioned so much of this work. But as well as I do, I love being able to create those sandboxes and that fun for the colleagues. At the end of the day, it's like, how does it translate to that member? And by the way, I'm the one that has to worry about the resourcing and the budgeting and the performance and all that. That's my job. Like, do I miss the days of being the one who got to go, oh, new toys? Now I get to talk about the new toys. I don't think anybody would let me touch a keyboard today that had anything to do with code anymore, except that I appreciate and understand their world so that I can create one that they want to be in. Nobody wants to be touching any of the technology anymore. They just want to be able to talk about it and make sure they get funding and resourcing to make it happen. But that's the joy and the responsibility that comes with the ability to do the things we do every day.
As long as you don't start talking about basic programming, which doesn't relate to anybody that's talented in the space right now, unless they're in our age bracket. We see some of the similar tectonic shift on what our market share. So from a healthcare perspective, Sarah, we've been taking share. We doubled our business in year 1. We were 43% in year 2. The story of the security and the convergence in the cloud and on-prem, and the being able to control between a variety of threat vectors, as well as starting with our next-gen firewall, SD-WAN, connecting back to the cloud, securing all those clouds with all the same process controls, and being able to add on products in a very, like you said, dynamic way. Performance is that we give those end users. So they're like, you came from the provider side, patient satisfaction, clinician satisfaction. That's what the entire business is built around, to drive those things. And if what you're doing can be repeated by somebody else, I would love to see the masterclass on it when you go and deliver that. Just saying.
Or if nothing else, if you're in a huge environment where you're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Well, take this big of a piece. What's the 10% that's not going to make a mess of anything else? And then here's the best part. We have this phenomenal relationship with AWS. We're like, here's what we want to do using your technologies. And they're like, yeah, we'd want to do that too. And so think of how many customers they have. And really our size, but in the scope of what we're doing, we have this amazing account team and some people dedicated just to us to show how you can do this and how you factor this in your environments. And so you have to be a little bit of a risk taker. Like there's huge risk associated with it, because what happens if we don't get there in time? Well, I'll probably be out there with a little, picket sign, like available for work, because if it goes great, then I have a team who did it. If it gets anything is a hiccup, it's my fault. And I know that. And I want and love that responsibility, because if you don't push yourself to parameters, and this is the same for fitness, that allow you to do it, it's risky but safe to a degree, and how are you ever going to become a better version of yourself or of your organization or anything else? And if we want to live to be, I don't know, I joke, I'm going to go out Betty White style. New Year's Eve, 2073. I still have more than half my life to live. And I want to be the one who's maybe playing pickleball or out there just being able to walk to the mailbox and, be excited about whatever that may be. So it all revolves in and of itself. None of this is mutually exclusive. And I think that's what the privilege to a degree is, in being able to serve our clients and our members and our colleagues that we do at Tivity.
Yeah.
It's an honor to do, more than anything.
And I agree with you, Sarah. I mean, I got into this, in the healthcare business, 2003 in the pilot over in my last job, 2005 we launched. And one of my favorite clients always said, hey, how do we improve patient care without changing bedpans? So that's every day when I get up, and that's what we do with some of our technology. And that's, same as you. I don't know if I'll live to 2073, but I want to be, able to do, the DECA events. I want to be able to go to the rowathon and row for 3 hours straight and be like, yeah, I rode 30,000 meters. I want to be able to go and do, the Murph, I'll be the old guy there that everybody's taking pictures with my headband on and my hair sticking straight up. So, I mean, that's, the journey that we're all on. If we've got half our life to live, you better take care of yourself, because you only get one, one body to live in. So, Sarah, appreciate all that context. How does somebody get a hold of you? What's the best way? Is it LinkedIn? Is it email? I had somebody, Ryan Connolly, give me his phone number on the podcast the other day. What's the best way for somebody to hunt you down, to connect up with you?
I always say it depends why. But for the most part, I'm responsive on LinkedIn. I will go check my messages, and as long as it's not like a canned sales pitch, those have to be. And this is more of a public service announcement. There's people who will connect with you and they send you messages over and over and over and over again. Hey, are you busy? Hey, you didn't respond. Hey, I can do this for you. Hey, this. The thing is, when you get to certain levels in your career, if you want a type of service, you're looking for a solution, you're going to go to your network for it. Like I would ask you before I would just blindly go out and seek something. That doesn't mean can you not contact me and be curious? No, absolutely. But if you're trying to sell to me, then I'm going to take a different path than just a random LinkedIn outreach. But at the end of the day, if you reach me through LinkedIn, then I'm going to look at my messages. And if there's a natural connection that makes sense, or more, the best way to get to most people is through an introduction. And I say that very respectfully, because one of the things I have in my LinkedIn profile is Super Connector. So Jay, if you reached out to me and said, hey, do you know so-and-so? And I'm like, yes. When you said, would you make the introduction? Of course I will, because you and I already have a connection or a relationship. So then I would expand that network and that out to you, with the intent that there's reciprocity involved. So the best way is to do LinkedIn. And if you really want a thoughtful conversation, do it via an introduction, which means you're going to get about 75 requests. We also filter through to make sure that there's a mutually beneficial perspective to the connection as well. Just picking somebody's brain is one thing. It's another thing if you're a student looking for research, or if you're a woman in technology looking to figure out how to navigate that pathway. I have a lot of mentees from different classes I've taught through time and other spaces. I'd like to say I'm available, and if it's a sales pitch, it has to be an introduction. If it's more of a warm, thoughtful conversation or a mutually beneficial connection point, then absolutely I'll respond.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Sarah. I mean, like, hey, my friends are your friends. That's how it works. I mean, we're fast friends, connected on that. Everybody knows how to get a hold of me. It's either on LinkedIn, Twitter, pharma@fortinet.com, healthcare@fortinet.com. Pick one. If you don't want to talk to me, you'll get the rest of my team. But, that's how we roll here at Fortinet. So at the end of the day here, we get to my favorite part of the podcast and why I wanted you on, Sarah, because you're always interesting to talk to, regardless of what forum or venue we're at. But it's like corporate Christmas to me. We're going to talk tunes. You're the third person that's come in and said, "Hey, I want to talk." Since you're the guest, you get to pick, and you said, "I want to talk Jimmy Buffett." So let's talk Jimmy Buffett on how it ties back into aging community. I've got my roster of a few, but since you're the guest, you go first.
So you want me to pick my favorite songs that apply to the conversations we've been having, or just why is he such a beloved individual throughout such a huge fan base?
So why don't you start with, why do you love Jimmy Buffett and how you're interconnected with the fan base? And let's talk about a couple songs, because I've got some good aging population songs.
All right, good stuff. So I was first introduced to him when I was about 15 years old. And so you think about, that sounds like a really long time ago. And yes, it was, but I was 15 in 1989. Well, he'd already had a pretty storied career by that point. And the thing about him that I found to be so endearing, because I've been over 50 shows and I always dress up in all these goofy costumes and I just love it. It is a form of escapism that's not about escaping your reality. It's escapism to go into that place that allows you just to have fun and be whoever you are, whoever you want to be. So you've got this, let's just say 25,000 people in a stadium or in a concert, all dressed up, and there's grandparents, their grandkids. It transcends time. There's an absolute timelessness to him. There's an approachability. It's country, it's rock, it's folk, it's a little bit of everything. He does amazing covers. And there's no topic that's really been off limits over the years. He jokes about, being old and being young and making mistakes and all the things that we all go through. There's an approachability and the whole sense of like, when you go to his concert or you spend time listening to his music, it makes you feel good. And who doesn't want to just feel their very best selves? And I've always just loved that about him. And he's followed me now, I'm only 49 years old, and he's still putting out new music, and I'm still listening to it. And he just has no shows right now. He did get sick. He said, "Hey, I've had to cancel my shows this summer. I'm dealing with," he didn't really go into details, but he said, "Hey, I'll be back." And so long as he can be, he will. He's 76 years old. His birthday's on Christmas Day. That guy will perform until he can't anymore. But there's still, remember the beginning, I said this limited window. I will see him as many times as it feasibly makes sense to do it as soon as he's back on tour, because there is a timeline to that level of like energy and give back that he has with all of his fans. He even said it's therapeutic for him and his fans when he gets on stage.
Well, that's great. So, and it's great that you had that connection into that community. The only contemporary I think that's still in that same tax bracket is probably Sammy Hagar. He's about the same age and still putting out new music, and you feel good. Jimmy Buffett, Sammy Hagar. There's very few. There's a good select bucket, but let's talk about some of his music and how it connects back into what we talk about with the aging population and technology, and what we talk about. Any particular song, since you're an aficionado of what you think?
So here's what's super interesting. I feel like I know a lot about him, but I'm not going to like win the Trivial Pursuit, board game of him. He has had 67 singles released over 52 years. Isn't that nuts?
Wow. That's a machine.
I mean, think about how much music that is, and like 29 studio albums, 9 compilations, 8 live albums, all these crazy different spaces, 14 live albums, excuse me. There's 3 songs as I was thinking about, hey, I'd prepare for some time with Jay. And I picked Growing Older But Not Up, Book on the Shelf, and A Pirate Looks at 40, all for specific reasons. And then you asked me about a cover, and anyone who's a Crosby, Stills and Nash fan and loves Southern Cross, his cover live of Southern Cross will always be probably my all-time favorite live cover of any song. It can be debated lots of different ways, but we were just in Indonesia, and it was the second time we've been in the part of the world we could see the Southern Cross. And of course, there's Sarah with her iPhone playing the song while we're looking at the constellation. Everyone looking at me like, seriously? I'm like, the best parts of your life need a soundtrack, and I brought it. And they're like, of course you did.
100% agree that everything has a soundtrack to your life. There are so many things that do weave in and out when you're talking about that. Great call. I had a couple of those on my list. I did not have Southern Cross, but I did have the 40th Pirate. I've got Trip Around the Sun, because there's many trips around the sun as you age. Oldest Surfer on the Beach, because I could be that person someday. And then 5 o'clock somewhere. It's always 5 o'clock somewhere. A good friend of mine retired. He said every day is like Saturday. So I think my favorite cover that he does is Brown Eyed Girl.
Yeah, it's
That's,
a good one
you
too.
know, and you can go, so the reason he's good at it is because it's a good song and anybody can play it that just learned guitar. And if you go to a lot of live music that's no name, good local bands, they'll play Brown Eyed Girl. So you could always feel, like you said, feel good connected to Jimmy Buffett. And there you have it.
So two goofy little add-ons is that I always change the words to brown eyed girl to blue eyed girl because I have blue eyes, and I've been doing that forever. My husband just kind of gives me that look, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, I know. I got to sing in your version." And then, if you come in our house, of course, we have digital clocks that are on, coffee makers and stoves and whatnot. Any clock in our house that is hands telling time, and we actually have three of them, they are all set to 5. Someone walked in our house one day, they're like, "How come all your clocks are at 5?" I'm like, "You don't know us very well." Whereas another couple friend came in a while back and they're like, "Oh, sweet, all the clocks are 5." I'm like, "Yep," because they know they're also Jimmy Buffett friends. But 5 o'clock somewhere. So all of our manual clocks in this house aren't plugged in or have batteries. They're just set to 5.
Hey, everybody's got their jam, and that's a fantastic, icebreaker, conversation starter, part of your DNA. So love it. Well, Sarah, anything else on Jimmy Buffett before we wrap up here?
I would say that Jimmy Buffett is exactly an example of doing what you love will keep you young. And therefore, make sure you find what your passion is and do it as much as you possibly can, especially if it's healthy for you.
No, great call. I appreciate it. Well, listen, Sarah, thanks so much for coming on the Hammerdown podcast. I didn't open with the correct intro, but hey, everybody put the pedal to the metal and the hammer down. Let's talk trends, tech, and tunes. We'll close out strong. Listen, share it with your network, share it with your friends, like it, tell your mom, have a great one.